Welcome to The Explainer. There's a decision that invisibly shapes your city, your wallet, and your daily life. And no, it's not about giant skyscrapers or fancy subways. It's about something way more common, something hiding in plain sight, the humble parking space. So let's just start with this huge question, right? Why do our cities look the way they do? Well, the answer, more often than not, has less to do with cool architecture and more to do with how completely obsessed we are with the car. And it really does impact everything. Okay, look at this contrast. On the left, you've got a scene we've all seen a million times. A massive amount of land dedicated to just storing empty cars. But on the right, that's a street in Tokyo, and it's buzzing with life, right? And that's happening because it prioritizes people over parking. This isn't some accident, it's a choice, and it shows you just how much power we have to shape our cities. This brings us to a really fascinating paradox. I mean, we've all been there. You're desperately circling the block, totally convinced there is just not enough parking anywhere. But the reality? Well, it's way more complex and, honestly, a lot more interesting. You know that feeling of frustration when you're circling for the third time? It's not just bad luck. It is the direct result of decades of city planning that's all built on this one hidden rule. A rule that has quietly forced us to build a frankly ridiculous oversupply of parking. So let's pull back the curtain on this invisible rule, shall we? We're going to dive in and tackle this myth that parking is, or ever could be, free. Because, as you're about to see, nothing, and I mean nothing, could be further from the truth. All right, this invisible rule actually has a name: parking minimums. The best way to think about it is like a recipe that's baked right into our zoning laws. For pretty much any new building, whether it's a small coffee shop or a huge apartment building, the city says you must build this many parking spots. And a lot of the time, those numbers are totally arbitrary and have nothing to do with what people actually need. And this image just shows the consequence perfectly. Just look what happens. As you go from 0 parking required to just 1 space for every 100 square feet, the useful space, the actual homes and businesses, it just shrinks and shrinks. We're not just building parking lots, we're actively giving up the parts of our cities where we live and work to do it. And that space isn't just space, it's money, a lot of money. The cost to build a single parking spot in a garage can be as high as $37,000. That is a staggering cost, and it doesn't just vanish, it gets bundled into the price of everything else. So here's the kicker: that hidden cost, it gets passed on to all of us. It's baked into your rent, it's in the price of your groceries, the cost of your dinner out, which means, and this is the crazy part, even if you don't own a car, you are helping to pay for parking for people who do. Now, what's really cool is how some businesses actually do way better by just ignoring this model. I mean, think about Trader Joe's. Their parking lots are famously small and chaotic, right? But get this, they sell about $1,700 per square foot. That's nearly double what Whole Foods does with its gigantic parking lots. It just goes to show you that what we think of as enough parking is often way too much. Okay, to see how these abstract rules create a very concrete reality, let's zoom in on the story of one city, Manukau, in Auckland, New Zealand. Its transformation over just 50 years is the perfect case study in how planning for cars first can totally remake a place. Just look at this timeline. In 1959, it's basically all open farmland. By 81, you can see a city center starting to form, but notice what's all around it: these huge surface parking lots. Then jump to 2010, and wow, the entire landscape is just buildings floating in this giant sea of parking. That's what happens when you plan for cars above all else. And this just became the default, the blueprint that nobody questioned. It didn't just change how the city looked, it fundamentally changed how people lived. It created a place where driving wasn't just an option, it was basically a requirement. But, the story doesn't end there. Cities like Auckland are starting to rewrite the rulebook. They're challenging all those old assumptions and asking this really important question: what if our streets, our most valuable public spaces, were for more than just storing cars? So Auckland's new strategy is actually really smart. It's not some one-size-fits-all sledgehammer. Instead, they divided the city into 3 tiers. In Tier 3, that's the city center with great transit, the goal is to prioritize literally everything but the private car. But in the lower density Tier 1 areas, it's more about responding to problems as they pop up. It's a much more tailored, intelligent way to do things. And you can see they're focusing on places like these major transit corridors. By changing the parking rules here, Where people already have options like buses and trains, you make it so much easier for new homes and businesses to get built without that huge financial burden of excessive parking. It's all about being strategic. And the payoff? Oh, it is immense. When we manage parking better, we're not just taking away cars, we're adding life. That little strip of asphalt can become a protected bike lane, a dedicated bus lane that helps thousands of people, or a wider sidewalk with trees and benches. You're not losing a parking spot, you're gaining a community asset. This means we have to shift our priorities at key places like transit stations. So instead of dedicating all this valuable land to park and ride lots, which, by the way, you still need a car to get to, we can invest in things like secure bike parking. It's a simple change, but it makes it way easier for more people to use transit without a car at all. And you can already see this happening all over. A space that was once used for storing one person's car for hours is turned into a parklet, a lively spot for a dozen people to eat and connect. It's just a much, much higher value use of that public land, right? So, where does all this lead? Well, by rethinking something as simple as parking, we're not just making small tweaks, we're actually opening the door to a totally different people-first vision for our cities. I mean, the goal is to build places that look more like this, a reimagined Manukau that's dense and walkable, where people can actually get to a train station on foot, where the streets themselves are places you want to be, not just things you drive through. And if you think this is all just some fantasy, get this. In Japan, they've completely flipped the script. Over there, the right to park on the street just doesn't exist. Before you can even buy a car, you have to show a certificate proving you have a private off-street spot to keep it. It completely reframes parking from a public right to a personal responsibility. And this is what it looks like when you really start to put people first. You see our streets not just as plumbing for cars, but as our largest, most valuable public space, an asset that we can redesign for safety, for community, for everyone. So, we'll leave you with this question to think about. The next time you walk past a giant, half-empty parking lot, don't just see a place for cars. See the potential. That space could be a park. It could be homes for people. It could be a playground or a new local shop. The choice really is ours to make.